I never thought I'd be telling this story. I was an accountant at a mid-sized tech company. Let's call it Innovate Corporation. For 5 years, I was the model employee. I came in early, stayed late, and my performance reviews were always glowing. I loved my job, I loved my team, and I truly believed in the company's mission. Then, one Tuesday morning, everything changed. My boss, Sarah, called me into her office. I walked in expecting to discuss the quarterly reports, but the head of HR was there too. That's never a good sign. Sarah looked uncomfortable. She couldn't even make eye contact. She mumbled something about restructuring and unfortunate but necessary changes. Before I could even process what was happening, the HR manager slid a box across the table and told me my position was being eliminated, effective immediately. I was stunned. Fired? Just like that? No warning, no explanation. No, we're sorry to see you go. I asked why. I had just received a bonus for exceeding my targets. Sarah just shrugged and said, "It's a business decision." They had security escort me to my desk to pack my things, then walk me out of the building like I was a criminal. I felt humiliated, confused, and incredibly angry. My whole world had just been pulled out from under me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The words business decision echoed in my head. It just didn't make sense. I started replaying every conversation, every email, every meeting from the past few months. And then it hit me. About 2 months ago, I was working on the year-end financials and I stumbled upon something strange. A series of large, vaguely described payments were being made to a shell corporation I'd never heard of. The invoices were approved directly by our CEO, Mark, and our CFO, David, bypassing the usual approval process. When I first found it, I flagged it to my boss, Sarah. She told me not to worry about it, that it was above my pay grade, and to just process the payments. I was uneasy, but she was my boss, so I did what I was told. But now, sitting in my apartment, unemployed and betrayed, I knew that had to be it. I wasn't fired because of restructuring. I was fired because I knew too much. They saw me as a liability, someone who might ask too many questions. The anger I felt turned into a cold, hard resolve. They thought they could just throw me away to protect their dirty little secret? No way. They underestimated me. I was the one who managed their books. I knew where every single digital skeleton was buried. For 5 years, I had access to everything. And while I never would have abused that trust before, they were the ones who broke it. Thankfully, I'm a bit of a data hoarder. I always kept backups of my work on a personal encrypted hard drive, just in case of a system crash. It was a habit that was about to pay off big time. I spent the next 2 days fueled by coffee and a sense of justice, digging through years of financial records. What I found was worse than I ever imagined. The payments to the Shell Corporation were just the tip of the iceberg. It turned out our CEO and CFO were using company funds as their personal piggy bank. They were funneling millions of dollars into this fake company, which they owned, to pay for luxury cars, lavish vacations, and even down payments on multi-million-dollar homes. They were cooking the books, inflating our company's earnings to secure bigger bonuses for themselves and mislead investors. They were committing massive fraud. And the worst part? My boss, Sarah, knew all about it. I found emails between her, the CEO, and the CFO discussing how to hide the transactions and what to do about the accounting guy who asks too many questions. That was me. There was even an email from the week before I was fired where the CFO wrote, "We need to handle the accountant problem permanently." It sent a shiver down my spine. This wasn't just about losing my job. This was genuinely scary. I had all the proof: bank statements, falsified invoices, internal emails, the works. A complete, undeniable trail of their corruption. My first thought was to go to the media, to blast it all over the internet. But I knew I had to be smart about this. These were powerful people. I needed to do this by the book. So, I compiled everything into a detailed report. I organized the evidence chronologically, with clear explanations of how the fraud worked. It was the most important report I had ever written. Then, I took a deep breath and made 2 calls. The first was to a top-tier employment lawyer to make sure I was protected. The second was to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. I submitted my report as a formal whistleblower complaint. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings with investigators and lawyers. It was stressful, but for the first time since I was fired, I felt like I had taken back control. The investigators were professional and thorough, and they immediately saw the gravity of the situation. Then, the day of reckoning came. Federal agents raided the Innovate Corp headquarters. They seized computers, files, and records. The CEO, CFO, and my old boss, Sarah, were all let out in handcuffs. It was all over the news. The company that had tried to silence me was now exposed for the whole world to see. The fallout was immense. The company's stock plummeted, investors sued, and the company eventually had to file for bankruptcy. A lot of good people lost their jobs because of the greed of a few at the top, and that's the part that still bothers me. But the fraud would have eventually bankrupted the company anyway. At least this way, the people responsible were held accountable. As for me, the whistleblower program meant I was entitled to a percentage of the penalties the government collected. Let's just say it was a life-changing amount of money. It was never about the money, though. It was about standing up for what's right. They tried to ruin my life, but in the end, they only ruined their own. I took the biggest risk of my life, and it paid off. I lost a job, but I found my integrity, and that's a trade I'd make any day. So what's the lesson here? Trust your gut. If something feels wrong at work, it probably is. And never, ever let anyone make you feel small or powerless. Sometimes the person they think is just a quiet accountant is the one who holds all the cards. Thanks for listening to my story. If you found this interesting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you next time.